Hello and welcome to another StarCraft 2 editor tutorial. This time we're going to continue the beginner series and we're going to focus on the data module this time. So yeah, let's just launch the data module right away. And what you'll see is a window popping up here. And you start in the Units tab. You should start in the Units tab if you haven't launched the editor before. So if this is all new to you and very disorienting, don't worry. I'll try to explain it thoroughly. So I have all these tabs set up from the very beginning. And you can click the green plus right here to add different types of windows. So this is the abilities tab. This is where all your abilities are in, and where you can select them and access them and change them and all that. And in here we have the units tab, where you can also just change the unit's health and his speed and yeah, radius and stuff like that. So that's basically how that works. So by selecting these data types or different units, you can see that the windows here, this window and this window out here, changes depending on what unit you're in. So let's search for Marine, just for the sake of it, and press him. So you can see now this is the Marine from the I think he's from the campaign. He's from the Nova Story assets. Depending on what dependencies you have chosen, you might have something like liberties written here, and some different different values in here, but that doesn't matter for this tutorial. So when you have the Marine selected, you can see that this window pops up with the Marine, and all this ability drop down, the actors and behaviors are all things that are attached to this one unit, and that changes depending on what unit that you have. So that's quite a lot of things that are attached to just one unit, which is also why map making takes so long, because you have to edit all kinds of data stuff in this. So yeah, let me just explain the windows just real quick. This is the button that lets you view the raw data of everything. I don't recommend using this because it's very disorienting, even more so. So deselect that one. This one will display this list as a drop-down folder section thing. I don't use that. I mostly use this one, or always used this method, because yeah, all these folders and stuff can get very complicated to find stuff, and yeah, so yeah, just deselect that and display all object sources. I'm not quite sure what that does, but it seems like it shows the units from the different the modifications of units from different expansion levels. It's what I can tell from this. Deselect that. I'm not going to use that very much. The Show Object Explorer button just lets you show all this very important stuff. Quite important if you want to edit the unit and navigate through your unit very easily. So now let's go to the view in Data Navigator. So by having selected a unit, let me select the Marine, it's more simple units. Having a unit selected and pressing this will show up this window, and you can just use the mouse wheel to zoom out. So this is a chart that shows how your unit is connected to all these different abilities and buttons and models and sounds and stuff, upgrades and effects. So it seems very complicated at first, but I'll just tell you the basics. So you can see you have an actor down here. Your Marine unit is not actually the visualization in game. You have to have an actor to visualize your unit. Just like with anything in the game, it's visualized by actors. Models and sounds and doodads and everything is visualized by actors. So this actor is attached to the unit, and the unit is what the unit is just something that can be manipulated in the game, which can move, and it can die, it can use abilities, and it can, yeah, all sorts of stuff that the actor cannot do by itself. It's just to visualize this unit in a sense. And so all these visualization, or all these models and sounds are connected to this actor to make this marine animation right here, or to make the marine look like it's running, when it's running or moving in the game and stuff. So very basic stuff. I'm not using this very often, but this is just to give you an idea of how everything is connected. So a unit doesn't have damage that's another thing, that unit doesn't have damage inside the unit itself, if that makes sense. It has to have a weapon attached to it, which has a damage effect attached to the weapon. That's basically how damage works when you shoot, and also when you use an ability. That's also just yeah, I don't think there's much to explain about this right now, so I'll just close this down. What else can I say? Well, oh, these tabs right here. Okay, so the table view is what I'm used most in this editor. There's also a detail view, which changes the field out here. So mostly I just use the table view because it doesn't slow your computer down as much when you switch between units in here. So that's just for navigational purposes, I think. And then you have an XML viewer. If you are very much into coding, then this is the way you want to edit the units, or if you know all this stuff, of course. And you also have an XML syntax highlight button here, which just highlights all the different data types and functions. But I'll just use the table view. That's most convenient for me. Then you have a wizard view, which is not very different from the detail view. I'm not sure what the differences between those are. So I'll go with table view. Now, you can also, when you're in the table view, you can press this show basic field label, which is gonna help you a lot if you're starting up or just new to the editor. So it will show all the basic fields that you just need to worry about in the beginning. But I'm not using that as much, mostly because I like to see all the starting letters at the end, or at the start of this window, if that makes sense, just for me to navigate through it more easily. And also this button here, it sorts all the edited fields out and puts it on in the top here, just so you can have all your edited fields, just so all your edited fields are in one place. So pretty convenient. I use that a lot, or all the time actually. Show field categories, kind of the same as the basic field, but just shows you what the different sections or different data types do in here. Not using that as much, but you can do that if you want to. Combine structural values, it just closes the drop down thing from the command card, for example, and yeah, just to make it more easy for you. So show field differences, I'm not sure what that is. I've always put that on. I cannot remember what it is exactly, but I always have that on. So now I think I will show you the different sections in the data module, the units, abilities, effects, behaviors, actors, and all those sections that I know of the most. So let's start with the unit section. The marine that I demonstrated or showed on it earlier, and I have toggled on the show basic field labels, so we'll just cover the basics of these fields out here. So these fields are almost on every unit, depending on which type of unit it is. Now we're just taking the marine as an example. Just a basic unit, not a projectile or a structure or anything. So by starting off, we have the abilities field. Here you can just add and remove different abilities that the unit might have. And you'll also have to add the buttons to the abilities if you want to be able to use them in game by just clicking on them. So by doing that, that's the command card. So the unit has the abilities, and in the command card, that's the little thing that you have in the right hand corner. So this is a move ability, and to change these abilities, we can do that just on the go. We can just set the command type to an ability command, and the ability could be a stop, and set the ability command to stop. So whenever we press the move button right now, we will order the unit to stop, actually. So that's how that works. And you can only add abilities in this command card that you have added in here in the basic abilities here. So that's pretty important to note. Attributes, it just labels the unit as something as a light or biological. That's going to be used inside mostly I think the damage effect. We'll go to that later, but it will filter out the different those attributes, and say you have a damage effect that would damage more on biological units, then this unit will be affected by that. Cargo size, very self-explanatory. The unit will only fill out one slot inside a medevac, for example. Collide, this is just the field where what unit types this unit can collide with. Not gonna go too much in detail with that. I think the things that I think I'm not gonna go into detail about the most obvious things, life maximum and life starting amount. Pretty self-explanatory. All those fields here are pretty basic, since it is a basic field that we have here. Now, one thing that I want to mention is the weapon. Units cannot get some damage inside the unit itself, or the unit has to have a weapon and attached to that weapon. So now we can just go out here and scroll down, find the weapon that is attached in here. That will show up here in this list. The Marine C14 Gauss rifle. On that weapon, we'll have the damage effect. So yeah, that's just how weapons work, in the sense that you just have to apply weapons to the unit in order for it to damage. And you also need an attack ability, of course, on the unit for it to attack. What else? Turning rate. One thing I want to mention about that one is that the unit's visual actor will turn a slower rate, but the unit itself would just go to that location immediately. So that's the thing that I don't understand why they made it like that. So that's, yeah, pretty strange. But what else do we have? Let's go down in the basics here. Behaviors, it's just where you add behaviors, just like you add abilities. That could be permanent behaviors, or also just temporary behaviors. But the temporary behaviors will appear once the unit has created, or be on the unit as it's once it has been created, and then count down until it is counted through its duration. What else? Effects, that's just a field for, yeah, that's just to launch an effect that would happen in game if the unit was to be created. These two are pretty much the same, I guess. I've not experimented with that that much. This is an effect that will happen when it dies and when it gets revived. Energy, armor, energy, maximum starting rate, starting amount, regeneration rate. All these are pretty basic. I don't think I have to explain that much about that. For those who are making a hero battle map or an RPG, the loot here, I think, yeah, this determines how loot is selected when the unit type is killed. So pretty much you can just hover over all of these fields and it will give you a small description of what it does if you change anything. Most of these fields does that, not all fields does it. Mostly new fields that haven't where the programmers haven't made a description, just made a quick implementation. Resource type, that could be minerals, I think. Yeah, I don't know if that's more for if it was a resource unit. Resources in this game is also units. So now we'll head into the abilities section, or the abilities tab. This tab is quite different from the units tab, where you could create one type of unit that was based off of something. I don't think I showed that. Let me just go into units. If you add a unit here, it will always be a parent of a different type of unit. It's a little bit different inside the abilities here. Here you have an ability type, and you also have the parent that you saw in the units. Just always go with default. That's mostly what you should be using. But the abilities type is quite different. So you have all kinds of different abilities or type of abilities you can make. So arm magazine, I'm not exactly sure what that is. I've not experimented with that, but I think that arm magazine is used for the Ghost Academy when you launch the nuke. I think that's when you're not arm and magazine, you'll have a nuke available to launch. I think that's how it works. Attack ability, just a default attack function or ability, just like the one that is already in game. I don't think you should mess around that much. Augmented abilities are abilities that they're essentially, I think, auto-casted abilities. I don't think I've messed around with that much. But you can also make auto-cast abilities inside effect instant and effect target. So not sure exactly. I think I made ability. I think the charge. I think the Zealot's charge is an augment ability. Yeah. So that what they basically are is just auto-cast abilities. Battery. Not sure how that works. Beacon. Not really sure how that works. Maybe some mothership teleportation system. Behavior is an ability that you can activate, and it will a behavior will appear or be added to the unit. But we'll talk about behaviors in a while, or just in a bit. Build, just the normal build ability from SCV, probe, and I can't remember what the other one is. Drone, I think. Buildable, not sure what that is. Now, the differences between effect instant, effect target is just this effect instant ability will just happen instantly. That will happen a set of effects just when you click the ability. This one needs a target from the unit. Yeah, just at a distance. Harvest, harvesting minerals. Interact, that's for, I think, shops and stuff if you're making a hero battle ability, but that's way too complicated to go into detail about. Inventory, also just a regular inventory system like you see in Warcraft 3. And that's also very detailed. Same as learn, that's also the thing you know from Warcraft 3, where you learn a set of abilities from your hero, you know, the red plus that's in the side when he levels up and stuff like that. Merge is just a merge ability between two High Templars that form one Archon. Mergeable must be connected to this one, I think. I don't know about that. Morph, where you morph as circling into a Baneling, I think. Morph placement, not sure what that is. Move, that's just a normal move ability that you see in game. Pawn, something to do with the item shop or something, or just a shop in general that you can create. Not exactly sure what that is. Progress, don't know about that. Q, not sure what that is either. Maybe something when you maybe some function or something that happens when you train a hero, or sorry, just a unit from a building. I think that's it. Rally, I think that's connected to the Q thing, that when you have finished training a unit, it will send the unit to the rally point. Redirect instant, redirect target, not sure what that is. Research, pretty self-explanatory. It's just to research upgrades and stuff. Revive, not sure how that works. Specialize, don't know that either. Stop is just the regular stop ability. And train ability is to train, I think, units from the barracks or something, for example. Just an example. Transport is an ability that lets you, just like the Medivacs transport ability. Warp train, that's just like the warp gauge. And warpable, some ability that has something to do with the warp train. So now I just explain all of these, and I don't think you're going to use all of them, but I think we'll just go into detail about the effect instant and the effect target. That's those abilities I will be explaining. So the example that I'm going to use is going to be the High Templar's Size Storm ability. So let me just type this right, High Templar. And that's gonna be the Size Storm here. So as you can see, this is an effect target ability, because you target an area that you want to launch the ability. So all you see here are all the fields that has been edited by Blizzard, and these are the fields that are just left at the default. So let me just explain these things. The cast time finish, I think when you cast the ability as a High Templar, it will take 0.5 seconds for the Templar to move after, or do anything after this ability has been cast. So that's what that is. I think if you have set it to I think if he's stuck in one place, I'm not exactly sure. The minimum amount of time casting you must be in the channel phase. Yes, that's it. Okay, so the commands here are basically just the button that you apply to the ability. So the execute, you don't need a cancel button. It already has a default cancel button, but you need an execute button. So in there you have to go into buttons and create a button in there. That's quite simple. I'll go over that a bit later. And then you just have to attach it in here, the default button. And here are some requirements and stuff like that, different flags and stuff that you can apply to this button. So the requirements here are to mostly they're used if you don't have any upgrade. I think that's true for the, I don't think the I think the High Templar has Psystorm from the beginning, I'm not sure, but that's how you would use requirements, or if he doesn't have the required level or stuff like that. So let's just press cancel. The cost, now the cost of abilities is a little bit confusing from the start, but I'll just go over it. So to make a cost, you have to press the green plus here, and that will add a field. Now that field is also represented in indexes here, and this, by having more indexes, you'll also have more ability levels. Imagine you have a hero and you want him to be able to learn level 2 of an ability next time he levels up. This is the way you wanted to make some different or some adjustments in the cost of the ability. So index 0 is basically just level 1 of the ability, and index 1 is level 2 of the ability, or the cost of the ability, so to speak. So let me just delete that one. And in here you have some different settings. You have the charge. Now this is just a charge amount, the maximum amount of charges you can have. An example of that is the nuke. I think the Terrence nuke, you have a max count of 1, and the count start is 0. You don't have any nuke from the beginning, and the count uses 1. So that's basically how that works. If you want to make something that uses counts. And you also have a time use of the counts. That's basically the cooldown of the ability if it is in charges, and you also have just a default cooldown, which is right here. Time use, it's yeah, the Psystorm ability has a cooldown of 2 seconds. And then you also have the resources, the cost of the ability. You can either do it in fractions, so this is a percentage. So, and a value of 1 in energy here means the 100% energy from the unit. And it doesn't quite make sense, because you could actually just press to make 10 here, and then you would require 1000% of the unit's energy, which is impossible. So let me just delete that one, leave it at 0. And you also have it in absolute values, like 75. It costs 75 energy for the High Templar to cast this ability. So that's how that works. The cursor effect. This is if you have any visuals on your cursor, or any actors that has that model. So let me just find it here. You can. That's the this actor is the cursor splat. It's attached to this ability. So yeah, you can also see when I press this cursor splat down here in the token, it's attached to this ability right here. I'm not going to go into detail about how this all works, but you can see that a cursor splat requires an actor to be attached to the ability. And so the cursor effect is basically just how large this cursor splat will be. So the search effect, now I'm gonna overlap these different sections. I have to talk about effects now, because the search effect is just an effect area where you where the ability searches for units and damages those units in that area, basically. So the next thing is just the effect. That's basically how or what effect that launches from the ability once it has been cast. and that's the High Templar Psystorm Persistent. Now there are different effect types that we're gonna be talking about later on, but I'll just stay at this ability for a second. So the range, that's basically just the range at how far you can cast the ability. That's a 9 in range. Alignment, not exactly sure what that means. And now I just double click that one, cancel that one. Orders, don't mess around with that one. That's something pretty advanced stuff I haven't touched at all in the editor. So the ability has different phases, which are casts and prepare phases, and also finishing phases, which is basically just cooldowns that will count down, or timers that will count down. So this is just I don't know, I think this is the channel phase. Maybe that's the other one, the other cast thing. But I know for sure that the precast time is basically just a cast time, just like in World of Warcraft, where you have, let's say, a Frostbolt ability that will charge up in a number of seconds, and then it will launch. So that's what the prepare time is. And you can also show progress in here. That's where you can show how long the unit is in the prepare phase. So you can check that off, and you can check it all off on all these fields to show all the different phases. And where's the last thing? I think if we go down, progress buttons, yes, that's just to show which button this ability has while it's charging up. So that's pretty nice to just have as a visual, I guess. Now, target filters are an important field in this. This is mostly used, or just only used, if this ability is going to be cast on a unit. This specific ability is going to be cast on a point, so you don't need target filters until you get to the search effect, because that's going to search for different unit types. But essentially, the target filters, or just search filters, or filters in general, just filters out different type of units that can be hit by this ability. So you can say that the ability can be allowed to hit air units, or it can be excluded, so it will not hit air units, or you can say it required, so it has to be an air unit that should be hit by this ability. So let us just set it to, I think it's allowed from as a default on every one of these. It just shows up because I clicked the button. Let me just do it on this one too. Nope, required, allowed, yeah, just did that. It can also filter out allies, enemies, neutral, and player, and yeah, different kinds of filters that you can filter out. Yeah, I think that's it, maybe. No, the arc, it's not something I use mostly, but this is just an area, or yeah, just an area or radius around the unit. Not radius, but an angle around the unit where the ability can be cast. So if we set this to 90, this field to 90, then the unit would only be able to cast this ability in a 90-degree angle in front of him. So that means 45 degrees to each side from the point that it's facing. And yeah, this was what I was talking about earlier, where you can make this ability an autocast ability. So when you can say if an enemy unit enters at a desired range, this unit with this ability will target that unit and cast the ability. So that's pretty much how that works, just like the augment. Not sure why they have those two different abilities. I'm not gone into depth about that, but so let's take another ability. That's gonna be the effect instant. I don't think I have to explain that much about effect instant abilities. It's very much like this one, except that it doesn't have a doesn't have any target filters because it's an instant ability and it will just be cast whenever you click the button. So that's essentially just what that is. Other than that, those two abilities are pretty similar, and I used a lot for hero abilities specifically. So now we'll go into the effects tab, and I will explain what effects are. And for some reason in the beginning I confused effects with special effects, like explosions and missiles and something visual that you see in game, which is actually actors and models and sounds. But effects are essentially just things that will affect units mostly in the game. So if we just let's just search for blink. It's a pretty standard or simple effect. So let's see, where is it? Stalker blink. The Stalker blink teleport effect is called, and it's an effect type of teleport. Now this effect will just send the unit forward, or just teleport the unit forward on the targeted location, and has a max range of 8, I think. Excuse me. So that's basically what effects are. There are things that affect units in some way. It can be damage, and it can launch missiles, which, by the way, missiles are also units that are launched. But let's just go over the different effects that can be created. So if we just right click and press add effect, you can see that you have some different effect types. I'll just go over them really quickly. Apply behavior is just an effect that will apply a behavior on the target or the caster or something. Apply force, it's a little more complicated. It's an effect that will send the unit in a certain direction based on who's launching this effect. So this can be the unit can be sent outward from the caster or be pulled inward to the caster. So it's kind of the Star Wars Force thing that you'll see a lot. Apply kinetics, that's a new thing and I haven't explored it that much, but it's essentially just also something that's quite similar to apply force, but it can only go, I think, X, Y, Z directions, or it can also rotate stuff around the unit, or rotate a unit around another unit and stuff. Yeah, I think I'll display a picture in the corner. Cancel order is just, I think if you're training a unit or something, or if you're, I'm not sure what the cancel order is. I've never used this one. Create healer, it's just something that will heal units over time, which is, I think the medevac and the medic uses this effect to heal other units. Create persistent is a very broad and I think the most powerful effect of all in this editor, because it can do a lot of stuff. It could be used as a timer to time effects, so you can create chains of effects that are timed, essentially, and it can also offset effects on the X, Y, and Z directions. So yeah, that's a very large, there are so much stuff you can do in this. So I'll just go to the next one here. Create unit, it's very basic, we'll create a unit. Damage is just very simple, it's just a damage effect. Almost everything that you see that is being damaged in the game is used by this very effect. So this will damage units basically. Destroy healer, that will destroy the created healer, I guess, on a certain unit. Destroy persistent will do the same for the persistent. Issue order is just an order to a unit, whether he's going to move or stop or something. It can also launch abilities, so you can, or yeah, well, obviously move and attack and stop are abilities, but it can also launch other abilities through this effect. So you can launch a blink and yeah, make the unit blink in a certain direction that you did not do by yourself. Iterate inventory, I think this is I'm not sure what the iterate effects are, never experimented with those. Launch missile will basically launch a missile on the target location, and it has some impact effects and stuff that will happen when the missile impacts. Modify player, I've not used that one. I think it modifies minerals or resources in general. Modify unit will modify the unit's health or energy, shields. I think height too. I'm not sure, but it can modify stuff in units. Redirect missile will, I think it will. I never used that one as well, or either, but I think that redirect missile will just, yeah, as it says, redirect a missile to another unit if it's already launched to one unit. Release magazine, not use that one. Remove behavior, that will just remove a behavior that you've applied in this one, or just any behavior. Remove kinetic, will just remove a kinetic, very simple. Return magazine, never use that one. Search area, that is an effect that will search in an area or a radius that you specify. It's basically, I think it's used by the Size Storm ability, so it will search in an area and then it will damage the units in those areas, or in that area. That's basically what it is. A set effect, now this effect will, it will combine a lot of effects to happen all at once and not as a chain. So you can add, I think, unlimited amounts of effects in this one. I'm not sure, but you can add a lot of effects to happen all at once. Switch effect, it's now this one is, I've used it and it's excuse me, it's a little bit more complicated because this effect will switch between two sets of effects, or I don't know if it can switch between multiple, but essentially this is used by, I think, the Hyperion when it shoots those laser bolts at the ground, as you see in the Wings of Liberty campaign when it enters the atmosphere. I don't know what the mission is called, but it's the third mission in the Wings of Liberty campaign. And those missiles are, one missile is targeted towards one unit and another one is just targeted towards a point. So it will switch between those two effects every time it fires those missiles, essentially. Teleport, I already explained that one with the Stalker Blink. Transfer behavior, I think this will transfer, well, obviously transfer a behavior to another unit. Never use that one. Use cooldown, that's used for the nuke in the game, I think. And use magazine is, yeah, I think that will use a magazine inside the ability that we saw earlier, the magazine ability. So those are essentially all effects that are in this game, and they look very different. So this, let's just create a damage effect. So this one has a basic amount, which is basically the amount of damage it will apply to the unit, and then you have yeah, various other stuff. The death type, this will display if you have a, let's say a ghost or a marine that is hit by this effect and dies from this damage effect, then you can set this death field to fire, so the unit will burn as he dies. It will look like he's burning as he dies. You can set it to eviscerate, and then I think the marine will be cut in two, or cut in half, and yeah, it will basically just show that. So that's what the depth thing is in here. There are a lot of things that are very self-explanatory, like the impact location. That's obviously gonna be the target point, the targeted unit. Then we have the search effect, which is looks a little different because it's a different effect, of course. So in here, in the basic areas, plus, oh sorry, that's the wrong button, or wrong field. If you double click that one, it will open this window, and you can add some areas that it will search in, that it will just search in. So the maximum count -1 means that it will target unlimited amount of units inside that area. If you set it to 2, it will only select 2 units in that area and fire whatever effects you've set in here on those 2 units. So I think the radius here is just normal. That's a normal radius for the search effect, and the radius bonus is if you have. So this is where it gets very complicated. So if you have a persistent effect, so okay, one thing I forgot to mention about persistent effects is that they can also count in periods. So you could set the period to, let's say, I think I'll demonstrate it in the persistent effect real quick. So let's just create that. So in here you have something called, where is it, period effects, period duration, and period count. So the period count, if you set this to 3, it will go through 3 periods over, and duration for each period will be 0.1 second, and it will go over the period effects that we define in here, which could be multiple effects. Like, let's just say this one, let's add another one, this one. So it will go from this to this one and back to this one again, because it will go through if you had multiple effects. So let's say this one, it will go through this list and jump back up again if you had more durations or period counts here. So so if you had the same, if you had the search effect that we created here, the unknown effect, we haven't named it, but if you set that effect inside the period effects, just as that one, then and also had a period count of 3, then the radius bonus here will count 1. So let's say it has 1 by default, and every time it ran through the period counts inside the persistent effect, this radius bonus will be added to this radius. So if that makes sense. So that's a little bit complicated, that you can expand the circle with the persistent effect. So that's how they're chained together. So I know you can also see that the effect will be added on top of or below this one if I add it inside it, the period effect here. So let me just do that. So let's say unknown effect, that's the search area, and then it will appear in here. So that's how the list works. Now we have changed those effects together, and now this unknown effect, that's the search effect, that will show up in this little window here. So now let's head over to the behavior section and just let it load for a second. And what behaviors are is essentially just buffs, something that can be applied to units. But it's also much more than that. It's more than just your regular buff like you see in World of Warcraft or any MMO, basically. But I'll just go over the different behaviors that there are in this game. So let's add a behavior, and you can see just like the effects and abilities, you have a behavior type. So the first behavior type is an attribute, and it's largely connected to the veterancy behavior, because the attribute is a way to increase stats for your unit, and the veterancy is actually a level system. So the attributes can be counted up in stats in a sense. Attributes and buffs are very alike, except that the buff has it cannot be modified inside the veterancy, but it has much more to it than the attribute. So a buff is essentially a traditional buff that you see inside an MMO, just like like I mentioned, World of Warcraft, like you see some sort of strength buff or stamina buff. That's what this is. And it allows you to specify a duration and also a period time inside this, just like in the persistent effect in the effects tab. But I'll go over this when I'm done explaining all this. The click response, not sure how that works. I've not gone into that. Conjoined, same. Creep source is what I would guess is just like you have your creep tumor. I think the creep tumor has a creep source behavior attached to it, so it will generate creep in a certain radius. And yeah, I think that's how that works. Jump is it's like the Reaper. I think the Reaper has this behavior to jump up and down cliffs. And I also think the Colossus has this one, but I think there is more to that than just the behavior. I think there's some modifications like the mover and such in the unit itself and stuff. So that's an advanced behavior. Power source and the power user. I think those two are something that the pylon uses. The power source being the pylon itself, and the power user being other buildings that use this power source. And you can specify a radius inside this also. Resource is, I think this is minerals and Vespene gas. I think those resources have a resource behavior attached to it. I'm not sure, but I think that's how that works. Reveal is like your Selnaga tower, the thing that reveals a large radius around the map, and also units and bushes and stuff. Spawn, not really sure what that is. I think that will spawn a unit, maybe. I don't know. And now the veterancy. The veterancy is a leveling system for the unit, which will it will grant a level per or each time it reaches a certain experience amount. And you can specify that in some settings. I think I will show... No, I have a tutorial on that actually. I have a hero tutorial where I show how to create a leveling system, basically. And the last one is a wander behavior, which is basically just units wandering around randomly. They will just... I think there's nothing more to it. It's just something that the unit has that would make it walk to a location around its radius and go to some other places and stuff, just to make it look like it's living, or there's something happening on the screen. It's not. I think it's nothing more than just for visuals, visual purposes. So I think I will go in depth with the buff behavior, because that's a behavior that's widely used and a behavior that you will be using the most, I think. So let's just call that a buff behavior. Click suggest and press OK. So as you can see, there are a lot of options in this one, in this behavior. So you have your duration right here. This will, yeah, that's just the duration of how long it will be applied to a unit, and when the duration is over or has reached 0 seconds, then it will wear off the unit. And you have some effects here that will happen when the behavior is removed and when it's applied, and periodic and stuff. And you also have a stack count, just like you have a stack count in the attribute. But the attribute is a little bit different because it can be applied, or the stack amount can be raised or increased in the veterancy behavior. And you have period count and period here, just like in the persistent effect. And yeah, I think that's the basics of it. So let's go into the modifications tab and go into more depth about how that works. It's a very important field in this behavior. So inside the modifications here, you can make all kinds of adjustments to your unit. You can disable or enable certain abilities inside this, and you can also manipulate the movement speed of the unit. Like you have a multiplier, you have a maximum and minimum, and a flat speed bonus, deceleration, acceleration, all kinds of stuff. And you have a combat section here, which is basically just increase in just where you can increase damage. Also flat amounts and fraction amount, which is in percentage. You can also do damage dealt attribute. That's how much damage the unit will damage per these attributes. I'm not sure how that works. So let's go into the behaviors tab. Inside here, you can also make some attribute changes. That's what separates the behavior. The buff behavior and the attribute behavior. You can make adjustments like this. And I think, so you have some state flags here. Those are very important also. So if we have this checked off, that's a cloak field that will cloak the unit basically indefinitely if we didn't have any duration. And also invulnerability and radar, not sure what that is. Stun, this will basically stun the unit and it will be unable to move, attack, or anything. Suppression flags, that's also what you have. These are new ones. Those are some new flags and I haven't explored them yet. And I don't think I'll be using them at all in my future maps. So yeah, you also have those unradarable, unselectable, unstoppable, and untargetable flags, which are pretty self-explanatory. And so you have a none field. This was also something that was, I think it was implemented a year ago, and they didn't give it a specific name because it had so many different I don't know, it had so many different things inside it. I have not taken time to figure out what that is. I don't think I will be using it at all. So yeah, let's go to the units tab. And inside this unit, that's basically things that will modify the unit itself, like the detection filters, and you also have radar filters. What do you have? Mostly the important stuff in here is the vitals, which are basically just the life, energy, and shields, and you can modify inside this. So this is a bonus, so this will modify a flat amount of energy, life, and shields. This will set a maximum, I think. This will make a regeneration. I think this will increase the regeneration of energy, life, and shields, and this one will also increase that just in percentage. Resource, haven't gone into depth with that either. Resource harvest amount bonus. I think you can make some neat stuff in here. And the weapon, I think I use this one sometimes, but this will just enable and disable the weapons on the units, just to, yeah, I don't know. That's pretty self-explanatory too, so that's nothing, not much to say about that either. Yeah, so I think that's it for the modifications tab in here. And I think the death response, or damage response, sorry, that's the thing that I also wanted to show you, which is basically if a unit had this buff behavior and was getting damaged by any effect, you could make something happen to that unit, or even manipulate the damage amount and stuff. So by setting the chance here to 1, that means 100% of the time that the unit is damaged, then something will happen in here that you specify, and you can set that to 0.50 to make it a 50%, or 0.01 for a 1% chance. Let's just make it at 0. So you can do a ton of stuff in here, but what I do the most is, say, if I want something to happen when the unit is damaged, like let's say handled, I think this field will let an effect happen whenever a unit is damaged, and you can check the fatal field, which means that it will only execute this handled effect whenever the unit takes a fatal hit, which means if the unit dies from the next hit, then this will happen. And one thing that it can also be used for is I think invulnerability. So if we say that we have this fatal field enabled and we modified the damage fraction to, let's say, 0, I think 0 is yeah, I think that's accepted, then the unit will not be damaged by any amount, by 0, yeah, by nothing. So that's how you use that. And the exhausted field, I'm not sure. I think I've used this field once. I don't know what I used it for, and I'm not sure what it does actually right now, but that's a thing you can explore if you want to. So let's just say cancel. And I think this is it for, yeah, well, I can just go over the flags here. So you have one flag inside this behavior, which is the hidden flag, and this will basically just hide the behavior on the unit. Usually you have a behavior in the corner of the units, in the frame beneath your screen, but checking off this field will hide this. So yeah, I think that's it for behaviors. So yeah, I think this will be it for the data tutorial, at least this part, just for the unit's abilities, effects, and behaviors. And I think next time I'll be covering the actors, models, sounds, buttons, maybe. That's quite simple, but I'll cover it. Validators, maybe. And I don't know about weapons, but I think that, yeah, I can do that too. It's just so I have to split it up, just not to make a tutorial that's more than an hour long, maybe 2 hours, and also to post a tutorial for you guys as soon as possible. I've not done so in quite a while, but yeah, I hope you like this little, or I should say long, data editor tutorial. Leave a comment in the comment section below if you have any questions or suggestions on anything regarding this tutorial or just the editor in general. So yeah, I'll see you next time, guys.